So, no, I wouldn't say I have a passion for HR.
Welcome back to Human Resources for the People. It's a human capital revolution. Today we're going to be answering Ask HR questions because I'm banned. This is part of a long history on this channel of looking over questions in the Ask HR subreddit, reviewing them, and then responding. Since I cannot respond myself, there's a lot of interesting things that you can glean from it. And so we'll start off with sign-on bonus repayment in New York, then mandatory training off the clock in Ohio, and then finally current situation and rehireability in Massachusetts. Let's get into New York's sign-on bonus repayment. They joined a New York-based company remotely from another state, and actually that kind of matters with respect to legal things. What matters is remotely from another state. The state that you worked in is the state's laws that you follow. But they got a $5,000 sign-on bonus. At the beginning of the year, they were forced to either quit or agree to a PIP after they moved the goalposts and came after anyone not already at the new level of production. They signed the separation agreement, got paid with a severance, and looked for another job. 9 months later, they're looking from an email for someone that says that they have to repay the bonus within 1 month of being terminated. Given that the termination was within a year, they don't know if the agreement actually states this or why they weren't told it at the time of leaving. And they said the email was written sloppily, etc. So the question is, do I really have to pay it back? What do I do if I can't? In theory, if the document that you signed, which they should produce, says that you will repay it, you will, and you could have a debt in your name if the company took it that far. Quite frankly, most companies don't take sign-on bonuses that far, and they don't take them that seriously, and it's more likely than not that they will drop it. Frankly, if I had to guess, this sounds like a poorly ran company that couldn't manage these types of sign-on bonuses and couldn't manage how this would typically work, and frankly, sounds like a poor shop if I had to guess. So to answer the question, yeah, if you sign for it, you do have to pay for it. If you don't, you'll be, they would sick debt collectors after you. What will actually happen is probably that they won't go after it, or again, most likely they won't go after it. But it is a real thing. I mean, you do have to pay on sign-on bonuses if you say that you will within that time frame. The next one up is out of Ohio, and the question is mandatory training off the clock. They're an hourly employee. Manager is requiring us to attend mandatory after-hours training on one day, followed by a mandatory after-hours dinner the next. Told we're supposed to clock out at our normal time, won't be paid for any of the extra time spent at work. Is this legal? No, it's not. You got to be paid for time spent. The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 defines the term employee to include the words suffer or permit to work. So, suffer or permit to work means that if an employer requires or allows employees to work, they are employed and the time spent is probably hours worked and thus hours paid. Any time that you're being suffered or permitted to work, you do need to be paid, and that is per the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938. It's also the same act that we get exempt, non-exempt, same act that establishes a minimum wage, etc. Next up is my current situation in rehireability out of Massachusetts. I have a few questions that hopefully can be answered. They're in a situation where they're taking on a job that they feel out of scope for, thinks that they're falling behind, and it says, who determines if I'm eligible for rehire if I quit? So first off, there is obviously the scenario of being having an imposter syndrome, and I want people to understand that everyone feels like they're underwater and that they don't know what they're doing. You wouldn't be the first person, and you're certainly not the last. And so it might be a thing where you're just not appropriately calibrated for what's actually expected. You might be doing just fine and just anxious over the nature of your work and perhaps new to it. Question is, who determines if I am eligible for rehire if I quit? Generally the manager on that. I mean, I suppose if you quit very fast, HR might step in. There is no rules on this, right? It's completely company specific. But if I had to wager, the majority of the determination is your manager. And then finally, HR comes second. Now, in this scenario, there's been very few people that I've marked for ineligible to rehire that quit unless they simply were about to be terminated anyway. And that's very key. Finally, it asks, does this affect my future employment when I'm applying to other positions? No. No. In theory, I suppose if you Yeah, in theory, I suppose that if companies call your reference and ask them what you did and how you did, they could mention this. Most companies won't, and frankly, if they're quit, they're done with you, especially if they think you're doing poorly. And I think that this should be stressed in this scenario. If you're doing poorly and you quit, and the company doesn't have to go through the arduous task of terminating you, there's celebrations, there's cheers. People are absolutely excited. And so the idea that people are going to hold it against you down the road really doesn't hold up too much because, frankly, if someone that I had that was not a great performer, I'd be excited if they quit. They moved on to better waters, and we're both happier. So let me know what you think. What do you think about the mandatory training? I find that this is so frequently a problem, and this is the true time theft. This is what people talk about when they say that time theft is the biggest form of wage theft, is the biggest form of theft in the United States. Scenarios like this are stealing from people's pockets, and people need to understand the rules of engagement when it comes to working in human resources and when it comes to working in the workplace. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye, guys.